My name is Cody, and today we're going to talk about the Victoria Crown Pigeons that are at Feathers and Scales. These are our Victoria Crown Pigeons. These guys are the largest pigeon in the world. They're from New Guinea. They are and they usually will spend most of their time on the ground. They do fly, as you can tell, a little bit, but they'll spend their time walking around on the ground with either a pair or in a family group, a small group, and looking for any kind of fallen fruits, anything like that. They really like figs. That's what they prefer, and when they are in the wild. Here they really enjoy blueberries. They'll eat some invertebrates, so they'll eat little lizards and stuff like that. And we have caught them in the past catching wild geckos and eating them. As you can see, they're real pretty. They've got kind of a bluish feathers to them with some purple, and then they've got these really beautiful red eyes. It's really hard to tell the males and females apart. Females are usually a little smaller, but that's not always a good way to tell. And these guys are considered threatened, actually. One major issue is logging. These guys' habitats are being logged regularly, so at one time it was super common to see this species walking around the grounds. They're very, very calm around humans, even the wild ones. And so, but now more and more recently, it's been harder to find. The males are pretty fun because both the males and both of them are pretty fun because if they feel like they're being threatened or if they want to protect their territory, they will put their wings up in the air and charge after you and hit you with those big wings. And when you're trying to clean in the habitat, it's pretty fun to try to walk away from them because they're always trying to chase you. We are hoping this pair breeds at some point. When they do, they will lay one egg, and it will be incubated for about 30 days, and then when the chick hatches, it's going to fledge about 13 weeks, but it will actually leave the nest earlier than that. So when they actually leave the nest, they're pretty small, but they still have that same personality. They're completely not afraid of you. It's the parents' job to protect them, so it's not unusual for them to try to knock other birds or anything out of their area. These guys are again, in the exhibit, they're with other birds that are in here. It's called the Ballymina, and the reason is they occupy the same kind of area, and they usually don't interact a lot. It's too small to really mess with the Victoria Crown pigeons, so they just kind of run around eating anything they can get their food on, anything they can eat, and they don't really interact a lot. Their crown, which is very interesting, for a long time they would be hunted for the feathers on top of their head. That's not the common anymore, but they are a food source in the area of New Guinea, so people will eat these things. But it's not as common as it used to be. But the feathers on top of them were pretty popular. And every once in a while, you'll actually find them doing a behavior called sunbathing or dust bathing. And that's when they'll rub their legs on the ground while they're laying on their side and get feathers all over, or dirt all inside their feathers, and then they'll let the sun hit them. These guys also really like to be wet too, so if you spray them with water, mist them with water, they actually get very excited and run around and really enjoy it. And it's all about feather care, so all those behaviors are to make sure they have good quality feathers. Currently they're molting, so they'll be actually losing some of their feathers and growing new ones, and hope over the next month or so.
How big do they get?
Size-wise, these guys weigh about 4 kigs. Well, no, sorry, it's about 2.5 kigs. So, I mean, they're pretty hefty birds. They're super powerful. They're strong legs. And the only thing that's, and their wings are extremely strong. They're not big flyers, so when they do fly, it's only short distances. They spend most of their time walking on the ground. They're kind of like Papua New Guinea's chickens, basically. They kind of just run around, and it's also not uncommon for them to be used as a pet, too, in Papua New Guinea.
Since we kind of have them here together, can you tell us which one is the male and which one is the female?
Yeah, the one in the front over here with the green leg bands, that's the male. He's a little bit larger, taller, and he's a little bit wider. The female has a pink band. We put bands on him to just make sure that we know which one's which, so we don't get anything confused. Usually the male is the one that would be more protective of the area. It's his territory. These guys will regularly chase during breeding season other birds, keepers, anything that's in their way. After breeding season, they calm down and they're perfectly fine. But they're usually the ones that are the more outgoing of the two, out of the males and females.
What color are their eggs?
Their eggs are white, just a white egg, which is kind of unusual because they lay an open nest that's very poorly made, about anywhere between 10 to 15 feet up in the air. And pigeons, which this is a pigeon, don't make the most secure nests. They're usually kind of flimsy, but they only lay one egg and they only care for one chick, and it's the egg's usually white. So,
are they related to peacocks?
Are they related to peacocks? In a way, yes, they are. All those birds, peacocks, pigeons, they're all somewhat related. These guys are a little different in that they're more related to like the pigeons that you see in downtown, in the city downtown, stuff like that, where the peacocks are actually probably more related to a chicken that you may see in farms and stuff.
So what's the purpose of the crown?
The crown? That's a really good question. The crown is decremental, and so when the male, it makes sense why the male has one, because when he's trying to court the female, they actually will bow and make a deep call, which is part of it, but I don't know why the female has one either. And there's actually 3 species of these guys. Victoria crown pigeon, and then there's 2 others, and they all have a crown. The only difference with the crown here is the Victoria crown. These guys actually have the white tips on it. The rest, some of the other 2 species actually just have blue crowns.
So do these birds go through a catastrophic molt, or do they just lose some feathers?
They'll lose some throughout the year, but since we're about done with breeding season, we're actually seeing them losing a little bit more than usual. So because the breeding season right now would have been done, and so they're getting ready for next breeding season, so they're starting to lose some feathers. But they will lose some throughout the year, but right now they're losing some of their flight feathers and their wing feathers, or their tail feathers.
How long do they live?
Oh, man, these guys can live for a very long time, surprisingly. We're talking 20, 25 years. I've worked with one that was about 24 years old. So they're a pretty long-lived bird, and they're really hardy. So it's not unusual. These guys are actually not that old. She's probably about 2. I think they're close to about 2 or 3 years old. And so they're very inexperienced parents, so we haven't had a lot of success. She did lay an egg, but she broke it, which isn't unusual because she's pretty young, so she's still trying to figure the whole caring for eggs out.
Why are their eyes red?
That's a great question. I have no clue. I think it's not uncommon for them. Keepers joke their eyes are red because when they chase after you to hit you in the leg, it's to scare you, but I don't think that's why.
It goes really well with their plumage.
Yeah, no, it's a really neat kind of coloration, and these guys have a personality that really fits red eyes. It kind of adds to the myth of the Victoria crown pigeon, because it's not unusual for new keepers to be completely terrified of these guys, because they can be pretty, they're unafraid of anything really. So when they come towards you with their wings up ready to hit you, it can spook people sometimes.
How long has this pair been together?
So they've only been together for about a year, so we were super excited that they had an egg. We didn't know if they would. It can take probably 2 to 5 years before it actually really is successful. So for us to have an egg the first year we got them was really nice. We didn't, and again, it takes them a long time. Because they're long-lived, they can actually learn to care for them. It may take them longer than a smaller bird that only has a short lifespan.
Do they mate for life?
It's not unusual for the pair to stick together for a long time, but it's also all based, usually the mate for life behavior is only important if they're actually successful. If they're successful parents, and I've seen this with pigeons, Victoria crown pigeons, and blue crown pigeons, is if they're not successful, it's not impossible for them to start fighting and stuff. But if they breed and they have chicks, they're perfectly happy staying together for a very long time.
Why are they shaking their tail feathers?
That's just a behavior that they do a lot. They do it when I'm not in here or when I'm watching from a corner. They do that just part of their whole walk. It's a behavior that they do, and they also move their heads a lot too. It's something that I've seen for most of my career. It's just a behavior that they have.
I think they just like to show off.
Yeah. Gets attention.
What kinds of noises do they make?
So they make several noises. They make, the male will make kind of like a grunting sound. And they will make a sound that's very deep sound, like coming from the chest sound, which is the calling. They do kind of a grunt. And then recently I actually heard them make a sound I've never heard, which was a little bit higher pitch. And I don't know why or how that happened. It was the first time I ever heard it, and the male got super excited, which I think was because he just copulated with the female, and it was a super high-pitched sound, and he started running back and forth. That was the first time I've ever seen that.
What are their names?
We don't have names for them. We have a lot of birds, and so we only have a few birds that have names. These guys, we just never have named them.
I think you should name the female Lynette.
Lynette?
Yeah. Nobody ever takes me up on that.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I have worked with birds that have been named Damien, Lucifer, stuff like that, just because their kind of personalities are hard. They're one of my favorite species. I love these guys, and they're awesome to work with. And we just never really thought about naming them. I don't know why.
What's their favorite treat?
Their favorite treat is usually, it's blueberries. They only eat, we give them fruit and a pellet, a pigeon pellet. But for treats, they really like grapes. We don't give them a lot because it isn't very nutritional for them. It's more just a treat. And the female absolutely loves worms. They're a little worm called a mealworm, but these are actually called mighty mealworms. They're a little bit bigger. She goes crazy for them. And she'll actually, that's the few times that she'll actually try to chase the bollies away from any kind of food. They usually let them eat pretty much whatever they want, but that's the one thing that she really enjoys.
For the people who joined late, can you talk a little bit about their flight abilities?
So these guys are not the strongest flyers. They're just a really heavy bird. So they only fly for short distances up and down. And so they'll spend the majority of their day just walking on the ground, either in a pair, a family group, or a group of them. It's not unusual when you do see them in New Guinea to sometimes see 15 or 16 of these things walking towards you, which I would think would be kind of terrifying, but they're super neat, so I would be super excited about it.
What's your favorite fact about the Victoria Crown Pigeon?
My favorite fact? That's a really good one. Probably one of my favorite facts is, I don't know. That's a hard one. I think my favorite is probably that the when they do have chicks, they actually fledge very young, but they look very similar to the parents. So it looks very much like a miniature version of them. There's a couple of less feathers and stuff, but they still have a small crown. And so I always like telling people that, because just imagine these guys, but just a little but smaller.
So speaking of chicks, how long do the chicks stay with the parents?
They can stay with them for a while. It's not unusual for them to stick in a family group for about a year or so. And usually they kind of get the urge to leave after that point. But we've had, in the past, we've had them have a chick as they were nesting, laying another egg and nesting with and raising another chick, and they did perfectly fine. They do live in families, they're pretty good, but after about 2 years, they're going to get kicked out, typically in the wild. So they have to leave by then, but sometimes they leave sooner, sometimes they may be forced to leave.
So they only have one chick at a time, but how many chicks can they potentially have per year?
They can usually have, that's a really good question, because I'm not sure. I've only always had just one a year, because that chick does take a lot of time. They actually feed them when they're babies. They feed them basically like a crop milk. Pigeons do that, and so they'll actually regurgitate in their mouth, and they'll do that for even when the chick is fledged for a while. So since it's such a time sensitive, usually they only get one a year.
How big are the chicks when they hatch?
When they usually hatch, they're probably a little smaller than a tennis ball. Actually, the egg is smaller than a tennis ball, but they're pretty small. I can't really think of the weights off the top of my head, but they're not very big, but they grow incredibly fast in a short period. And that's a feature that pigeons have. Most all pigeons have that same ability to hatch a chick. They develop very quick and they fledge very young. Even though the parents still are caring for them, they actually are fledging at a time when you wouldn't think they should.
And are they born with those crown feathers?
Yeah, they'll actually have a little feathers. Well, they actually develop them pretty soon, so they're not born with them, but they get them pretty quick.
Yeah, I guess I should say, do they hatch with them?
Hatch, yeah.
Sorry,
that's a better question.
sorry
yeah.
about that.
I should have known that too.
I know. Sometimes I misspeak. Let's see. Oh, yes. We had a question earlier that I completely forgot about. Why are they named after Queen Victoria?
Well, at one time, I'm not quite sure. That's a question that's beyond my expertise. But a lot of the people that would go over and name these birds, taxonomists, and just, you know, researchers and stuff like that, these guys are a very old species. We've known about them for many, many years. So it could have been a tribute to them. A lot of birds, a lot of animals are named to tributes to certain people. So it could have been a tribute to her. But it was also the crown itself. I mean, crowned pigeons, they look very prestigious, and so that was it too. But yeah, I mean, the birds that were in here, the white birds, the Bali mynas, are actually named after the person that found them or found the area. I don't remember which one. So it's very common to name things after people. Thank you very much for coming and listening to me talk about the Victoria crown pigeons. Hope you're safe and healthy, and see you back when we open. Thank you. Bye.